Hello, great souls. Welcome to our Living Yoga Satsang. So I just want to let you know that if you're having difficulty hearing this through headphones, if you unplug, you can hear the sound clearly without the headphones. So it was only coming through one side. We did our best to fix it, and this was the best we could do. So maybe it's coming through fine for you, but I just wanted to let you know that. So let's begin together. Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, and beloved Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you now. Loving Masters, help us to feel thy living presence in our bodies, in our hearts, and in our minds. As we study these teachings and read these inspiring stories, help us to awaken to our own divine reality. Help us to feel your loving presence with us, guiding us step by step. May we be perfect channels of thy divine light in this world and with all whom we meet. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay, so we were finishing chapter 33 with Babaji, the Yogi Christ of modern India. Behind me is a picture of Jesus. We're close to Easter, if you're watching this at a different time. And we had a beautiful Easter concert yesterday. Based on, we sang the oratorio, which is a collection of music that Swami Kriyananda was inspired to write after he visited the Holy Land. And he went to the places of Christ's life. And in each place he meditated very deeply. And then after his pilgrimage there, these songs came to him about those experiences. He said he could feel the living presence of Christ. Yogananda also went to the Holy Land and visited those same sacred sites. And he said that most of the sites that are deemed historical sites of Christ and his life are true. Almost all of them are true sites. So we took a pilgrimage. Asha and Shanti led 40 Ananda members, many from Palo Alto, but also from Australia and other areas. We all took a pilgrimage together right before COVID hit. So it's remarkable. It was an incredible experience. A group from India also went. So we went, and it was just, 40 people is a lot of people. And then a whole group from India came, and Asha led them on a pilgrimage. So many of us were able, very blessed, to go on this pilgrimage, which when you hear the oratorio, it's very touching. It's always been touching to me. But then having visited these sites, it's all the more meaningful. So that's one of the reasons the altar is decorated the way that it is. And you might still be able to, I don't know if you can see the oratorio on live stream or not, but anyway, it was really beautiful. Very powerful day. Many people here. It's been 2 years since we've been able to have a live concert with a live audience. And yeah, it was truly inspiring. So this, the end of chapter 33, I was telling you, we were reading together this extraordinary experience of Ram Gopal. He was meditating with Lahiri Mahashaya. He was there, it was late in the evening, and he heard an inward message from Lahiri, go to this bathing ghat, right? And so he went there and had this extraordinary experience where he's sitting there and suddenly a large stone slab raises up on its own, and this beautiful young woman levitates from underneath the ground. She goes up into the sky and then comes down in front of him, and she's haloed in light. and says to him, I am Mataji, Babaji's sister, and I have called him here for a special meeting. And then he sees behind her, across the Ganges or behind her, this luminescent light coming from across the water. And it comes in the sky, and it comes and materializes right next to her. Lahiri materializes. And then another luminescent light comes from across the water and materializes Babaji. And he speaks to how extraordinary it was. I mean, he's watching it happen. He's feeling the power, the sacred power of their presence. So while part of him is in complete awe and amazement at what he's experiencing, he's also fully, so he lets us know. We get a window into his experience by having what I think any one of us might imagine we would experience, wonderstruck. And that's how he's describing it. He was wonderstruck. I mean, it was miraculous, and he knew it was miraculous. And so part of his mind, on the one hand, he couldn't in any way explain what he was seeing, but he knew it was real. He absolutely knew it was real. At the end of the experience, he goes back. So then Mataji, I'm not even sure if it describes that she goes, I think it does describe that she goes back. But anyways, the end of the experience, he goes back to Lahiri's, where he had been meditating. There's Lahiri. When he gets there, Lahiri's there and the students are there. And this is what he says. He said, infinitely, so this is just before he goes back, infinitely inspired, I wended my way back to Lahiri. Let me see here. I want to see if this says. Just before that, so Babaji, his conversation with Mataji is about remaining in his body. And they have this little exchange, a playful exchange, where he says, I am the same whether I'm in my body or not. And she says, brother, if that's true, why not stay in your body? And he says, the Divine Mother has spoken through you. I will remain in my body. And then Ram Gopal says, as I listened in awe to the conversation between these exalted beings, the great Guru turned to me with a benign gesture and says, fear not, Ram Gopal, he said, you are blessed to be a witness at the scene of this immortal promise. As the sweet melody of Babaji's voice faded away, his form and that of Lahiri Mahashaya slowly levitated and moved backward over the Ganges. An aureole of dazzling light templed their bodies as they vanished into the night sky. Mataji's form floated to the cave and descended. The stone slab closed of itself, as if working on an invisible leverage. So that is what happened. Infinitely inspired, I wended my way back to Lahiri Mahashaya's palace. As I bowed before him in the early dawn, my guru smiled at me understandingly. I am happy for you, Ram Gopal, he said. The desire of meeting Babaji and Mataji, which you have often expressed to me, has found at last sacred fulfillment. My fellow disciples informed me that Lahiri Mahashaya had not moved from his dais since early the preceding evening. He gave a wonderful discourse on immortality after you had left for the Ghat, one of the chelas told me. For the first time, I fully realized the truth in the scriptural verses which state that a man of self-realization can appear at different places in two or more bodies at the same time. Lahiri Mahashaya later explained to me many metaphysical points concerning the hidden divine plan for this earth. Ram Gopal concluded, so this is him telling Yogananda, Babaji has been chosen by God to remain in his body for the duration of this particular world cycle. Ages shall come and go. Still, the deathless master, beholding the drama of the centuries, shall be present on this stage. So very, powerful, incredible story. And this piece here of which we hear of other experiences Yogananda had. Let me take a sip of water. Yogananda had early, where he met the saint with two bodies. So he had his own experience of this before he hears this story. And what stood out to me when I was reading that is, I've talked about how Yogananda said truth is universal. So you'll find these teachings, the details will be slightly different depending on the spiritual path or the religion. But when it's a true path, the underlying truth will be the same. And as I was reading this, I was reminded of saints who be in two places at the same time. So in Catholic tradition, it's called bi. Their stories come back where, well, no, they were here. No, I saw them here. They were healing here. They were teaching here. So it's a reality that the masters put forth for us. And I was mentioning this last time. They demonstrate these miracles so that we can recognize our own divine potential and really elevate our consciousness beyond this mundane. It helps us move through life in a more expanded way, to have our eyes open, our ears open, our hearts open to our own divine reality, and as it appears to us, as it comes to us, because this is part of the teaching that on one hand, the masters reveal this divinity to us when we're ready for it, and if we aren't ready, it'll be here, we won't see it, right? So that's one thing that can happen. And other times the masters just won't reveal it to us, right? So it's, there's a story about Yogananda that always makes me smile, that I heard that someone had met him and said, oh yes, I've met Yogananda. He's a very good cook. And that's true, but he was so much more than that. But what this person could see was someone who was a good cook. They didn't see his expanded consciousness. They didn't understand in meeting him who they were meeting, who was this divine soul. He had no need to impress that on him, right? It's, the masters are here to teach, to offer support and to help to those who are receptive to it. And sometimes they will take a step, they'll be a little more assertive than, so they don't behave exactly the same with every person because they have an individual relationship with every person. They see each soul individually. They can read the hearts, the minds of each person and recognize, where is this person? What are they ready for? Right? And so they will respond to that person very personally. So with this individual, whoever it was, who saw Yogananda as a cook, there was nothing in Yogananda that felt he needed to reveal anything that would allow this person to see him as more than that. There was no need for that, right? So I'm assuming, I can assume, because that person wasn't ready for it. Right, to someone else. And he didn't, in fact, he talked about miracles, spiritual phenomenon in this way. He said the path to God is not a circus. So we should not be looking for phenomenon in our meditations, in our practices. Things will happen. And when they do happen, it's a blessing, it's a gift. We want to be discerning about it. So sometimes it's, especially in the beginning, it's a good idea to, with a mentor or teacher, you might check things out with them. I had this experience, and it can be very helpful for a teacher to listen with you and kind of tell you how to work with that experience. Oftentimes the feedback is, a teacher can sense the validity of the experience and help a student relax into it and just say, yes, that those are experiences we can have in meditation. Those are experiences we can have on the spiritual path. I think I was talking about that either last week or the week before, that I needed that in my spiritual journey. I was first, I had the blessing to be connected with a Catholic nun. That I wasn't raised Catholic, but a dear friend of mine who was Catholic, who we were working together, and I had shared a little bit with her. Actually, I can say what happened. She read my journal, which is an unusual thing, right? I was at work, and on breaks I was writing in my journal. I was going through a difficult time. I felt very alone. I was really struggling with lots of spiritual experiences that were, on the one hand, really beautiful and inspiring, but on the other hand, I didn't know how to handle them. I really didn't know how to handle them, and I wasn't part of a church. I wasn't part of a religious community, spiritual community, so I didn't really feel like I had any place to go that I could talk about it. And I was, so I was having a hard time. And I was writing I happened to have written in my journal about it. And in a journal, it's my experience, you can really pour your heart out. You can, kind of say sometimes more in a journal than you might even say to someone else, which I had done. I had done the night before, I think. I had just poured my heart out into my journal. And so I brought it with me at work, and I went to the restroom. I had my journal turned upside down. I went to the restroom. My friend read my journal. And I feel like it was really a divine blessing that she did. I came back to my desk, we sat near each other, and she was crying. I mean, close to sobbing. And what happened? I was only gone 5 minutes, and she was really crying strongly. And she said, I read your journal. I said, oh, okay. It's not great. I don't really like people reading my journal, but I didn't feel like she needed to be crying. I immediately was trying to say, well, I forgive you. It's okay. I understand. It's probably, you get curious. You couldn't resist. And that wasn't why she was crying. She was crying because I was so distressed in my writing that she was sad for me, and she was very concerned about me. And I said, oh, okay. And then I realized, yeah, boy, I remembered I had really been pouring my heart out, and I really was distressed. It wasn't, so I started to comfort her and say, well, it's okay. I was having a hard night, but you don't need to worry about me. Well, I'm glad she was worried about me. She said, no, I'm going to reach out to a sister that I know who, she's close to our family, and I want you to talk to her. She's a good person. I want you to talk to her. She can help you. And I really did feel like, okay, I was willing, because I was having a hard time. I really was having a hard time. So I said, okay, so she and her mother arranged for the 4 of us to have dinner together. The sister and I came, and the 4 of us had a lovely, sweet dinner. And then her name was Sister Rochelle. Sister Rochelle and I went in the other room and talked, and I told her my experiences. And I said, this is what's happening, and it's hard for me. I just had no context for it. I saw I had no context for it. So she sat with me and said she validated my experience and said, yes, it can happen. We really can experience the presence of God. We can. And, God is real, is really what she was saying. And whatever I shared with her, she said, it's possible. It's very possible. And I think it felt real to her. And I'm so grateful for that. I needed that. Later, I did actually become Catholic. I ended up going with a lay missionary group, and I was studying during that time to be Catholic. So I was going through training. There was a priest who was in one of the classes, and you had time where you could talk individually. And anyway, he was asking me questions about my spiritual journey, and I shared the same thing with him. And he sat and he said, yeah, it feels like the Holy Spirit is speaking to you. So that affirmation, I needed that affirmation. I really did. I really needed him as a priest. I could tell, they were dedicated to their spiritual life. I was very fortunate that the Catholic community that I found was connected with, was with them many years before I came onto the yoga path. So I think I've said I wasn't looking for another spiritual path when yoga came into my life. I really wasn't. Speaking of Jesus, the picture behind me, I felt, I had never used the word guru before, but when it was described to me what a guru is, a master, I understood that. I felt that was true of Jesus. And I never felt Jesus was the only master. That never felt true to me. So, that was never impressed upon me in my Catholic training, I'll say. It was never impressed upon me that there weren't other masters. It just wasn't part of the training. So I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that. So the training was Jesus, as again, I think we might even have, because in the Bible it talks about master, but those weren't words we used. But there was a commitment to Christ as a fully realized being, right? And now I have yoga language, so I tend to use that language more. But what I know is that when yoga came into my life, it lined up perfectly with every teaching I'd ever had, and my own personal experiences, spiritual experiences, they lined up. I resonated with them. I had experienced some of what I was studying in yoga. So these things are given to us as a way of inspiring us and helping us take our next step. The idea, but boy, I am one, I know I talk about it, I really have needed support. And Swami Kriyananda I may have said this before, but he was asked one time, do I need a guru? Someone asked. And he said, no, you don't need a guru. And then he paused and he said, unless you're wanting to know God, unless you're wanting to grow spiritually. And then, yes, the teachings are that we do need that. Now, again, interestingly for me, when I had loved Jesus as a child, and then I went through a period in my adolescence where God became more intellectual for me. I always felt God in my heart, but I just started, I don't know, I'm just going to say that I know that's true. I know that I was thinking I should know more intellectually. I should know the Bible. I didn't know the Bible. I felt like, I should know that. And I'm saying this because when I began to have a spiritual awakening around Christ, which came to me in sobriety, I at first was rejecting it and saying, I love Jesus. I did love Jesus, but I felt like, Jesus, there's so much baggage around Jesus. Like there's all and I literally, in my prayer, I laugh at myself. But anyways, I literally said, could it be Buddha? Like, could I have Buddha? I'll follow Buddha. I didn't even know Buddha. I didn't know anything about Buddhism. But I just felt like there was less baggage with Buddhism. So and I felt very strongly in my prayer, no, Jesus is your guru. Again, not the word guru. God, I just felt from, and then I was like, God, can it just be you and me? Like, I feel so close to you. Do I really have to have this intermediary? Yes, you do. Yeah, that was the guidance I received very clearly. Also, I received the guide. Anyways, so it's enough of that. But it lines up with yoga teaching. So yoga teaching is that we do, we all have that appointed to us. So when we're ready for it, it will come to us. And it comes first, Yogananda said, in books, and we receive what we need in terms of support. So the support we need, it comes to us. And when it's a guru, when we're needing that will come to us as well. We don't have to, the gurus are both personal and impersonal. They serve everyone. So there's great benefit and value to studying the teachings of any master. There is a high spiritual vibration from all masters. And so if in your journey you're at a place where you don't need a specific master, any master can be of support to you. When it's time for us, to have a particular master. It becomes known to us. We get the message, we do. So that's the teaching, and it's also my experience and what I've seen in others. So here's this experience with Ram Gopal, and what I'm saying right now is a precursor to our next conversation, because the next chapter, Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas, is about Babaji and Lahiri. And it's a beautiful, inspiring story of how Babaji, the first one we're talking about now is Babaji, but then we talk about Lahiri and Babaji. And it really talks about the power of Guru and what it is to encounter that and what happens for us as we awaken spiritually, and what a Guru can do for us. So these stories are told as a way of showing us what is, expanding our consciousness, helping us to be open in our spiritual life, and also recognize not only what is possible for us, but as we begin to have spiritual experience, have a sense of, I think, calm confidence. That's what comes to me right now. That not to be afraid. Asha said one time she had an experience in meditation, and she may have told Swami about it. I think she must have mentioned it to him. And he said, don't be afraid. And she tells the story that she very quickly said, oh, I'm not. But inside she was afraid. She said, I actually needed to hear that. I needed to be reassured. That's what I felt with Sister Rochelle. That's what I felt with this priest later that I was studying with. That in their own way, they were saying and helping me not be afraid. Not be afraid, right? God is here. And as we grow spiritually, Swami said to me one time, I'll wrap up with this. I had the blessing of having a conversation with him. I traveled to Italy with Ananda. I was still early in getting to know Ananda and the teachings, and this pilgrimage was coming up, and he was giving a 10-day course. It was a spiritual renewal week in Italy, in Assisi, and I was able to go. It was a really extraordinary time, and I had a conversation with him. I had asked him some questions, and one of the things he said to me was that, I used to hear him talk about this, and then I didn't. Anyways, he used this metaphor of a frog, and he said, for all of us are evolving, all the animals will evolve eventually and become human beings. He said, if you could actually communicate to a frog and tell it, someday you'll be a human being, it wouldn't be able to comprehend what you're saying to it, but someday it will be. And he was talking to me about my spiritual life and just saying, validating my experiences, what was my spiritual evolution, and just saying, it seems strange because we haven't quite caught up to who we are. We haven't, until we fully remember who we are, we grow spiritually and think, is this real? Is this okay? Am I okay? So we do need to test it out, right? And we can have other teachers help us hold that space, and then we grow into the expansion. The mind expands, we grow into it. The heart expands, we grow into it. Our life expands, we grow into it. And then we expand again. That's the journey until we're fully self-realized. So having good friends, having teachers and mentors, having books, having teachings that can help us to grow into the expansion of who we are. That's what the autobiography offers us, a pathway for that. The blessing of the masters offers us a pathway for that. So I hope that was helpful for you today, great souls. I think we've finished now this chapter, and next week we'll look at chapter 34, Materializing a Palace in the Himalayas. Okay, many blessings to you.